What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the little gem known as Emily is Away. Now, there's 3 of these games in all, and I will probably be covering the other 2. Back in the day, I played 1, and then I did play 2. I've never played 3, and it's been a long time since I've both played 1 and 2, but I went back to play Emily is Away, a game that released back in November of 2015. I, at the same time, thought this game was older, and I also thought it was, newer, like 2015, 8 years ago. Doesn't seem that long, but also does kind of seem long. But I remember loving this game. And this is one of those incredibly short but sweet kind of games. Actually, not necessarily sweet, because the ending of this game is actually incredibly depressing, at least to me. I am going to be talking all about it, so we are going to get into spoilers. And considering this game is roughly like 25 minutes, just so you guys know, right? Like, it doesn't take that long to then get into spoilers. It's a free game, at least now it is. I don't know if it was always free. I feel like it was always free. I do know, I think the second or the third game, I know the third game actually, you have to pay for. But hey, being free to then give me, 25, 30 minutes of it, all fine by me. 5 chapters, right? And they all take place over the years. Honestly, I think this game is incredibly special. Again, kind of depressing at the end of it, but I remember loving it back in 2015 and playing it again now. I actually felt very much the same. Now, this time, though, I went and I looked at the different deviations. Where does this game kind of break off, right? Because this game can break off, and I always wondered, because I actually made different choices, I think, this time than last time. I remembered what I did last time to see what would happen. So this is very much that AOL, chat room, early 2000s. In fact, I think that's the idea. This game takes place over the early 2000s, and you're you, right? You have kind of your username. I think I chose Podcast Now, but I did say my name was Alex, and you're talking to Emily, and it's happening over your senior year at high school, and then it goes over the 4 years that you're in college. And again, some of these things can kind of break up. And the first thing that breaks up is the first year, right? So you're going to a party, and you don't have to, actually. That's the thing, right? There is a party, and you can choose whether to go to the party or whether to not go to the party. And right there, that really starts to pave the way for what this game is going to do over the coming chapters. Again, none of these are long. I mean, average out, I guess, 5 chapters with 25 minutes. I try to take my time, right? I was looking at the options. I really wanted to make the best ones, the ones I feel like in the moment. This time, I tried to make it abundantly clear that I was interested in Emily and not anybody else, right? So you can kind of hook up and say that you like somebody. I chose to say, hey, we're just friends, her and I. I went to the party with Emily, so you do get the dialogue option of, why didn't you kiss me? And that changes, right? Because if you went to the party, the option is, well, why didn't you kiss me? And you go along with it. Versus if you never went to the party, you kind of reminisce on, well, do you wish that you would have? Would things have been different? But the entire theme of this game, besides being like a nostalgia trip, right, going back in those early 2000s, making it feel like that early AOL, which, by the way, I was around in the MySpace and Facebook era, so this isn't exactly, I think Emily is Away 2 is more of the MySpace era, so this is before my era. But even choosing the pop culture things, right, they have Pirates of the Caribbean. Actually, I think 3 in a row, they have my favorite things. They had Blink-182, they had Pirates, they had Green Day, so I chose all those as my icons. And then they had, a couple other things. So you get hit with that nostalgia trip, but also at the same time, it's a game about 2 people that are really, really close, right? They're close friends, and they definitely could have been more of just things would have worked out the way they should have, and then you grow apart. It hit me really hard back in the day. It still hits me hard now. Now, you have to kind of put yourself in that situation. Now, I have a wife, I have a daughter. I'm very happy. I'm not looking for Emily to actually be a human being, but I get what they're going for. This idea that you 2 are very close, and the idea that as these years go on, you just grow apart. And, I mentioned that ending. That ending is super depressing to me, because it's I would say it's maybe a weakness of this game, because I do think you can kind of do all the right things and it still doesn't work out. I think back in the day, I chose to maybe say that I think it's Emma is the girl's name, that she's more than a friend, like maybe you like her. So I think maybe Emily gets mad because when she comes to visit you, right? And now if you don't have her come to visit you, that's kind of where things end. She becomes very distant after that. And, the game, it doesn't have too much of the game after it anyway, but the game's pretty much over. If Emily comes to visit you, well, things are never the same anyway, right? Because you end up hooking up together. And depending on what you chose, again, I would say that's kind of a weakness because it's like I made everything kind of perfect. I always made it known that, like, I was there for Emily. I didn't like her dating somebody, but, like, I was going to accept it. And it's like, hey, it's your life. You do you. Just know I'm over here and I care about you. I laid the foundation. I made it known that my female friend is just a female friend, nothing more. So then when Emily comes, and honestly, I think I forgot a large amount of this game. I remembered certain parts of it, but I forgot that when she comes to you, you end up hooking up. But the idea is the game decides it for you, that when she comes to you, you end up hooking up, and Emily perceives it as you were almost capitalizing on her vulnerability. She was weak at that time. She had just broken up with her boyfriend. You came, you guys hooked up, you did some stuff, and she looks at it as not like you used her, but I guess more along those lines. When it's like, originally, I think I said I had feelings for the girl, and I was like, I can understand that because it's like I'm trying to cheat, right, and all that. I get that, but for this one, it's like, Emily, I'm doing everything that I could possibly do to be this close friend back in high school, and then just somebody who wants to check in, but you feel it. Like, I think this game is just so smart. In the first year of college, you can just kind of sense like, hey, these two are kind of close. Obviously, they're not in high school anymore. They're doing their own thing. But you're talking. You have some pretty serious talk, or you kind of get more into the weeds a bit. And when her and her boyfriend break up, you have this kind of like deep conversation. And then once the time comes when she visits you, after that, when you talk to her, she's very reserved. And she's more like, well, it's kind of weird now. Like, I don't really want to talk, or I don't want to talk about it. And then whenever you try to talk about the past, she's like, no, let's not focus on the past. Let's focus on the now. And then that final year. So the final year really almost brought me to tears back then. It still really hurts me now because it's this loss of a friend. I really think maybe that's the thing that I can still kind of relate to even now, is this person that you were really close to only like 4 or 5 years ago. And you imagine, like, I don't know, maybe childhood friends, but you definitely knew each other in high school. So you're all that. And then you go through these things and you grow apart. And then that last year, and it's just not the same. Like, it's not even close to the same. And the conversation that you're having is so much, it's just a surface level thing. But then the most heartbreaking of it all, and I did remember this happened. As soon as it started to type, I remembered this was going to happen. When you start to type these pretty emotional, really trying to be like, can we ever get back to the way we were? I still care about you, all these things. And you'll type it, and then you delete the whole thing. Now, I actually think that's an incredibly clever mechanic that they put throughout the whole game. Oftentimes, when you're typing, your character will literally make a mistake, right? And then they'll backspace and kind of clear it. But it also happens during some emotional parts of the game as well, where you'll kind of lean into how much you like Emily, but then you'll take it away. I think one of the examples is when you kind of make a mention that, like, you are always there for her, but instead you start to type that, and then you get rid of it, and instead you type, like, you have people that are looking out for you, and you're one of them, versus that you are the one that's looking out for her. And it's a small difference, but it means actually the world, because as us, we pick the option, we're typing it, we know what we want to say, we do say it, and then we backspace and we change it live before, like, the player's eyes. I think that's it's depressing, but it's also so clever. So then when you get to the end of the game and you're really like, she doesn't want to talk, she's very surface level with her, questions and answers, and then once you start trying to open up and really having these kind of like final farewell thoughts of like, how can we make this better? Like, let's talk how we kind of used to talk. Let me express how I feel about you. Instead, you ask stupid and I say stupid because it's so hurtful, like, emotionally to me to see, like, this character, our playable character, really likes her, has always liked her, and whatever the game decided, it messed it up for us. And then instead of asking these kind of heartfelt questions that I guess she probably wouldn't have answered anyway, they ask, how's the weather? seen any concerts lately? And then eventually it ends with goodbye. And what I found was really fascinating, right? And I kind of realized this, I guess, back then. I was trying to read again where the deviations would go in this game. If you pay attention, which is not too hard to do, every time Emily's the one who leaves first. She's always the one that has to go and, say Emily is away, or, her username is away. She left. The final one, you actually leave. So she's still there, but she's, again, very distant, not really giving you good answers, not really asking you kind of deep questions or giving you deep answers. And you're actually the one that logs off. And it's a small twist, I guess, but I actually think it's just very, very powerful. So, again, one thing I noticed when playing it, I did different choices. Choices I think made a lot of sense for current day, Alex. But then looking it up, the game doesn't have that many breaking points. There's only a couple of them. There's some characters that get swapped depending on what you do, but overall it's the story he wanted to I think it's just one guy, one developer who made these games as well. It's the story he wanted to tell, right? There's a couple times it branches off, but overall it gets you back on. And like I said, I think staying with Emily as long as you can is like the proper game, right? Because if you don't have her come to you, which I think is like chapter 3, if you don't have her do that, you really condense the last couple parts, because they can be a little bit longer, those last ones, if she comes. If she doesn't come, then she kind of makes an excuse, and she doesn't talk to you much the year after. And the final year, if she doesn't come to you, she doesn't even talk to you. I think she ignores like your request to talk. And that's, I guess, another kind of deep thing, right? Like, depending on how you choose, she gets so distant from you kind of naturally, because you kind of did it as well. She gets so distant that she doesn't even get on, right? Versus if you play along and you want to make it something. Again, I would just say that's the one big weakness with this game that I could say now, where it's like, because now I know all the different paths, and even if you do everything, again, say quote unquote perfect, things still happen. I feel like it shouldn't have. Like, I feel like they made a choice with your character, I guess both the characters, to hook up, right? Because they did some stuff, let's say, when Emily comes down. But, like, I didn't necessarily choose that. Like, I chose to see this girl, but I didn't choose to do whatever they did. I'm not taking advantage of her vulnerability in the moment, but the game says I did. And because the game, and really, that is the point. Everything after that is because of it. And they chose that for you, even though a lot of the other things you can kind of choose yourself. And it feels like you can kind of be the person you want to be. I think the decisions, even though there's only a couple choices, say, for each conversation to Emily, I think it actually makes sense. A lot of them are what I would say in those situations. Like, there's games where when you read the options and you type, they're not even close to what you chose, those kind of games. This game honestly isn't like that. It's pretty, again, it's condensed. It doesn't have that many choices to choose from, but it always felt like it had one for me, like one thing that I would probably say along those lines in the moment. I really appreciated that. But then there's the one moment where the game decides for you, and it kind of needed to for the game to keep going. But ultimately, I still think it's a nostalgia trip. It's such a special game to me, and it's honestly kind of heartbreaking. And it's kind of reflective of real life, that people can grow apart, kind of sometimes naturally, sometimes because of mistakes, but people do grow apart, and makes you kind of think of yourself, like, hey, how was I back in high school versus now? Where's my friends, certain friends? Like, did they grow apart? Did we get closer together? And you kind of reflect on that stuff. I think the game does a really good job of making you reminisce to your own life. So let me know what you all think in the comments. Did you play this game? Again, I'll be playing the other two, and we'll probably make videos on this channel on them. Thank you for watching, as always, and I hope to see you all on the next one.